Okay, hello everyone. Welcome. Happy Valentine's Day. What a great way to spend your Valentine's Day learning more about love and how we can love one another and love ourselves. This is our second Beyond the Couch series, and we are excited at the Wellness Connection to be able to provide this to our community free of charge and to learn about different therapies and ways to improve relationships and self-care. And we're so glad that so many of you could join today. We've had over 60 people register for this event, which is exciting. I just wanted to tell you a few things that if you're having any technical issues, please send them to info@wellnessconnection.com. But our Q&A and our chat will be available for you as well. I've got my heart sweater on and I'm ready to learn more about love and energy today. I wanted to introduce you to Laura Freix, our amazing energy healer here at the Wellness Connection. Laura is an energy healer, a coach, and an educator. She has extensive experience in various energy modalities, as well as comprehensive coaching experience in the areas of functional health, life relationships, and disease prevention and reversal. She approaches these topics from the inside out, supporting clients in cultivating and trusting their internal guidance system. And she uses something called AccuNect, which is described as acupuncture without the needles to help people heal. Laura grew up in a Western medicine household. She was a physician's daughter and the oldest of 5 children. But after graduating college, she became a senior math analyst at GE Aerospace and later left to raise her 4 children. So welcome, Laura Freix. Tell us more. Here she comes, I hope. Turn on your video, Laura.
I know, I'm trying. Okay, so let's get this started. All right, thanks, Kristen, for that warm welcome. And thank you all for coming today. I'm going to dive right in because I have a lot to cover. I'm going to start by helping you understand love as energy because
Hey,
I feel like
Laura,
this.
I'm sorry we don't see you.
Oh, okay, hold on.
There
Okay,
she
sorry
is.
about that. Now, can you see me?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, great. So I'm going to start by explaining how love is energy before we move into the core themes of tapping into the energy of life through presence, growing your capacity to love by removing the barriers to love, and becoming the source of love by choosing love. So to create a more interactive experience, I would like to use the chat today and the Q&A features on Zoom. So please note that the chat feature will display your name and the Q&A can be anonymous if you select that option when posting your question. You should see them in the bottom of your screen in a black box. All right, so let's dive right in. So in quantum physics, there's something called the 0 point field, and that is an energy field that connects all of us. So it's very interesting to me. People don't have any questions when our cell phones are connected to the GPS satellite network and we can talk to people across the globe. But this energy field works the same way. And it is the creative force of the universe. In spiritual terms, the 0 point field is considered God or source or the universe or even the divine within. And it's there's enough energy in this energy field to boil all the oceans in the world. So it's extremely powerful energy and it's very useful for healing. And I'm sharing briefly this Einstein's theory of relativity, E equals mc squared. And why I wanted to share this is because it's a great example how mass, our physical body, and energy are equivalent, hence the equal sign. So in Western medicine, like for example, a cancer tumor, they're going to focus on the mass and remove the mass. But you can also work on the energetic piece that created the mass in the first place to create healing. So it's really powerful. So I want to expand your understanding of disease. In traditional Chinese medicine, the root cause of disease is separation from God, the source or universe or the divine within. And energy healing works with the energy fields that organize and control the growth and repair of cells, tissues, and organs within the body and mind by changing the impaired energy patterns to improve one's vitality. Now, if you've ever used a radio, you understand you can tune into different stations, and those are sound frequencies. So all emotions have a frequency as well. So the downward spiral of emotions are the lower vibration frequencies. The lowest is shame, and you can see this list: fear and anxiety are about midway on the chart. It's crucial to feel all your emotions. You don't want to, but you don't want to get stuck there because they can literally get stored in the body and cause disease. It's equally important to understand that you can't be in two places at once, just like you can't be on two different radio stations. So we have to ride the waves of the emotions. We're going to experience all these things throughout our life. And a lot of times we often think we want to clamp down on sadness to experience more joy, but they're on a continuum. And so you can't clamp down on sadness without clamping down on joy. So it's just important to understand where these emotions fall on the spectrum so that you can move. You want to move to whatever is accessible higher up after you actually feel and process the emotions. So most of us, I hope you can see from this chart why you would want to access love, because it's right up there with peace and joy. So it's going to be a really great experience for life. And when you're in this state, your energy is usually feels much more expansive, and you have more energy to just go throughout your day. And energy is really your life force. It's what makes you feel alive. Emotions literally are energy in motion. So I want to take a few minutes to do a guided reflection, and I want you to think about moments when love energized you. Do you notice any common themes? Next, jot down, if you have a journal, or think about moments when you felt a lack of love and identify how that felt in your body. I know I feel very contracted when I'm feeling a lack of love. So, can you feel the difference when you think about those two things? If so, type yes in the chat. Okay, I see one yes. Thank you for participating in the chat. All right, some more yeses. Great. So it's really important to pay attention to what you feel in your body. Most of us aren't very um, connected to our body. We spend a lot of time up in our heads. So we're going to talk about that as well. So this is just something fun I wanted to share because our thoughts have energy as well as our words, and we'll talk about words more later. But Dr. Emoto was a Japanese researcher who studied the crystalline formation of water under the microscope. And before a prayer, that's what the water looked like on the upper left. And then after the prayer, it formed this beautiful snowflake like crystalline structure. Love and gratitude looks like that beautiful golden snowflake on the lower left. Happiness next. You make me sick, I will kill you looks like murky brown water. And then celebration of love. So our brain's mostly water and our body's mostly water. So think about what you want in your body. Do you want these beautiful golden snowflakes or the murky water? So the frequency of 528 hertz is known as the love frequency or the miracle note because of its healing properties. And I hope by this brief introduction, you can see why you would really want to be able to tap into this miraculous energy. The best way to access the energy of life is through presence. So I want you to take a few moments to think about, where does your mind go when you're not present? Please type your answer in the chat. Okay, I see Frederick said the future. Michelle said the past. Yeah, and those are really common. We're often, afraid of something that's going to happen. Sometimes we spend energy worrying about that and it never happens. Or we regret something in the past, like, oh, if only I had done something differently. But there's actually four places your mind goes when you're not present. So the past and the future, those are pretty common in the panel in the chat. We see that people understand that. But our mind also goes to judgment of self or judgment of others. And when I learned this, I was like, wow. So really, as humans, we're judgment machines, and it's it's just something to be aware of and notice. So at the end, we're going to do an exercise that helps you connect to the present moment, and I'll share an app with you that can help you check in with yourself so that when you do check in, you can notice, wow, was I thinking about the past or the future, or was I judging something? So, really great awareness because the greater your awareness, the more agency you have over your life. So, now I want you to share what is the first thing that comes to mind when you hear the word love? Like when you heard about this webinar, what came to mind and why did you want to join here? Like, what do you think of when you hear the word love? And this one is the most important thing. I want you to participate in the chat. So I'll give you a few minutes to do that. Yeah, Meg, but the world needs more of it right now. Absolutely. A mutual bond between two people, happiness, compassion, comfort. Okay, these are all great responses. God, thank you, Enid. So this is where I really want to kind of blow your mind, or at least open up your mind, because we experience love in the context of relationship. So, relationship to ourselves, relationship to others, our pets, and relationship to life itself. Are we enjoying life? Are we playing the victim? All these things are really important to consider. But what I find fascinating, I've asked this question to a lot of people, and no one has answered self. They never think of, when they think about the word love, they don't think of themselves. And this is the most important relationship we have is self-love is the foundation of all our other relationships. And that is the main thing I want you to get before you leave today, because self-love is where healing happens. I've spent probably 15 years building my understanding of healing, and self-love is the great universal healer. So please focus on loving yourself. And there's going to be exercises to support that throughout this discussion. Okay, so if the ability to love is universal, what's blocking our capacity to love? So I love that. I want to share this quote from Rumi because it's beautiful. Your task is not to seek for love, but merely to seek and find all the barriers within yourself that you have built against it. Distorted perceptions are at the root of our suffering. Through our life experiences, starting in childhood, we've often felt or perceived that it's not safe to reveal our love in the world. So, what do you believe? When I do my energy healing sessions, a lot of my work revolves around shifting beliefs that are ready to shift. And they might not be ready to shift consciously, and we might not even know they're operating because many times they're operating at the subconscious level. And I have the pictures, they're divided by Chinese 5 elements, which I don't expect you to understand, and I'm not going to go into. It's outside the scope of this webinar. But what beliefs do you resonate with? I'm not lovable. It's not safe to be intimate. I don't get to be joyful or happy. I'm not worthy of receiving. It's better to give than to receive. I want to spend extra time on this one because a lot of people think it's better to give than to receive, but the heart is a great model because if the heart doesn't take for a balance of giving and receiving, we need both in balance. And if the heart doesn't take back the clean blood from the lymphatic system, it would have nothing to offer us in the next heartbeat. So it's really important that we're also able to receive love. Everything always goes wrong. I've got to be in control. It's not safe to let go. I'll never have enough. I'm not safe. I'm powerless. I can't trust in life or God. I can't express myself. I can't make good decisions. And there's no hope in the future. Do any of these common beliefs resonate with you? If so, type yes in the chat. And for bonus points, you can share which belief resonated the most with you. And I want to point out that self-inquiry here is much more useful than blame. Ask yourself, do I feel safe? Do I feel vulnerable? There's another set of common beliefs that are about um, related to people pleasing. So I don't want you to hide who you are. These beliefs are also really common and come up with in sessions. People wouldn't like the real me. People will like me if I am nice. I'm not trying hard enough. And all of these beliefs, if you take them too seriously, you end up wearing a mask and hiding your true authentic self. And again, that's separation. And that separation from self is um, not supporting your vitality. So along those same lines, when you're concerned about other people, you can fall into the comparison trap. So what you admire in another, you have in yourself, and what you judge in another, you also have in yourself, but you haven't accepted that part of yourself. Either way, you're creating separation, which is not love. So comparison can be toxic, which is often our case when we beat ourselves up for not um, meeting our comparison, in our evaluation of ourselves to another. But it can also be a teacher because we can learn from others. And either way, someone that we want to be or someone that we don't want to be by choosing how to act. Boundaries are crucial in protecting your energy. So the foremost important thing you can do for your life and yourself and everyone you know is to protect your energy more fiercely than anything else. Make your life a safe haven in which only people that have the capacity to care and listen and connect are allowed. Brianna Weist. And I really love this quote. So I just want you to take a few minutes to really let that sink in. Next, I want to move into the topics of expectations and disappointments, which play into our relationships, including the relationship with ourselves. Um, so type in the chat where your expectations come from. And what about your disappointments? Family, yeah, very common. Our parents might expect us to go to college, or maybe they want us to do maybe we do plan to go to college, but we want to study something different. So that's very common. Society, yep, thanks, John. Um, yeah, bosses, sure. Yeah, the roles we've adopted from childhood. So um, speaking of the roles we adopted in childhood, um, that's where a lot of those beliefs that I shared earlier come from because we rely on our caretakers for our survival, so we have to learn how to please them. So basically, our expectations come from assumptions. We often assume that people think the same way we do. They can come from the gifts and gaffes from our childhood. This is a concept I learned from Jay Shetty. So if your birthdays were main event, like see the sparklers on this cake when you were growing up, then you might expect the people in your life as an adult to also make a big deal of your birthday. And that that might not be their way. And similarly, we can have gaps in our childhood, and we often expect the people closest to us to fill those gaps. But unfortunately, it's not their job. So we'll talk about more about your agency and your in creating your own life. So it can also come from difference in love languages uh, and being attached to a particular outcome. For the love language, the best example I can think of is say you're a parent and you have a really important job. So you're very busy, but you also have a lot of financial resources. So you might give your children a gift. But if their love language is quality time and attention, then they're not receiving that gift as love. And so it's really important to understand the love languages of the people that are close to you in your life. We can also get attached to a particular outcome. I'm a runner, so, when I train, I expect to, run a really good time. Or, if I studied hard for a test, then I'd want to get an A. But it's important, just like when Susan talked about manifesting, to not be attached to the outcome. That's that's really important. So there's actually 5 different love languages, and I'm just curious. So there's words of affirmation, acts of service, touch, quality time and attention, and gifts. So what is your love language? Or for me, I have two. It's a kind of a toss up between acts of service and quality time and attention. So I see someone's joining me with acts of service, quality time, and words of affirmation. So for me, it works really well because my husband's are touch and words of affirmation. So when he does his acts of service, I'm really good at giving the words of affirmation. So those acts of service keep coming. And then uh, when he gives me quality time and attention, then I'm more open to touch and, more intimate, um, be, you know, interaction. So yeah, super important. Thank you for participating in the chat. So what's maybe less well known is that, behind every expectation, there's usually a disappointment. But what's less well known is behind every disappointment is an unmet need. So we really want to get to the heart of the matter when it comes to our unmet needs. When I do my relationship coaching, we actually do an exercise to discover the unmet need. Because if it's a true need, our needs are getting met. And this exercise is to connect to the pain point, um, and to really find what that unmet need is. And again, so let me give an example to bring this to life. So I've worked with many couples where there's a difference in maybe the desire for intimacy. And so if, as for one example, if the guy just feels like the woman is not interested in intimacy, and um, but instead of just complaining about it, we do the disappointment exercise and get to the unmet need, which really usually touches on the pain point. When he connects to his pain around that unmet need, in a healthy relationship, once that need is um, discovered or discerned in that way, the his partner wants to meet him there, as opposed to the typical dynamic where he's like complaining about it. This touches on the pain point. So it takes, I love these Russian dolls because they're kind of in reverse. The heart should really be over the small Russian doll, but it takes effort to get to the unmet need, but it's super important to know what that is. And part of that is being able to ask for what you need. Part of being a spiritual adult is being able to ask for what you need. And my favorite way to do that is to just simply say, I would love. I would love to go for a walk with you later on today. I would love to go on a beach vacation with the entire family. I would love, um, yeah, just I would love. So a counter example. So there was a woman who was really annoyed because her husband never put the kitchen was always a mess. He didn't put his dishes in the dishwasher. They would just pile up on the counter or in the sink. And she was complaining about it. You never clean up the kitchen, or, the kitchen is always such a mess. And when she learned this, she just said, I would love to have a clean kitchen. And it, to her surprise, the message went in and the kitchen has been clean ever since because she asked in a way that landed. And so even then, another story is when a woman wanted a puppy, but her husband really wasn't a fan of that plan. So she didn't keep going on and on about it. She just said, I would really love a puppy. And just like the manifestation workshop, you just put it out there and let it go. And ultimately, over time, her husband surprised her with the puppy. So that's really a fun story. But again, back to the power of words, it's really important to speak in the I and avoid using the word enough. So, for example, if I say, you never spend enough time with me, there's two problems there. I didn't speak in the I. And anytime we use the word enough, I learned this also from Jay Shetty in his book, Eight Rules of Love. But anytime you use the word enough, it actually triggers the other person's not enough voice. And so that just evokes defense. So it's really important to avoid that word, as well as words like always and never, anything that's in the extremes. And you really want to stick to the present moment, because if you bring in past baggage, you're just going to repeat a pattern that needs to be, that hasn't been repaired yet. And ideally, from this point forward, try to stick to the present moment. So I also want to offer a reframe between on arguments and agreements. Because what if arguments, I changed the spelling here, are simply an opportunity to create an agreement between you and me? So we usually think, oh, here we go again, we're getting in another argument. But an example that I can share from my own life, going back to expectations, is that oftentimes my husband actually creates my expectation. For maybe I have a honey-do list, and he knows it would make me happy, an act of service, if he did something on the honey-do list. So I might not be expecting, the honey-do list is quite long and has been around for quite a while. So I might not expect him to do anything, but because he knows I would like him to, he might say, oh yeah, I think I'm going to finish the deck this weekend. I'm like, oh, that's great. And then the weekend comes and goes and he hasn't finished the deck. So I finally realized that he's kind of wired to be a people pleaser. So he was telling me what he thought I wanted to hear. And I had to clarify that I don't really want him to to say that he's going to do something if he really doesn't intend to do it. That's worse for me, to create that expectation and then the follow-on disappointment. So now we have an agreement that he's not going to promise anything that he's not committed to actually completing or doing. So I just really want you to think of this arguments as an opportunity instead of like, oh, here we go again, another fight, another argument, because the better you get at creating these agreements, the smoother life will be for everyone involved. I also want to discourage compromise. I know you might find that surprising, but um, Stephen Covey introduces the concept of synergy. And it's really important to gain perspective by walking in someone else's shoes. And the idea here is you really want to deeply understand the other person's reality, not just at the surface level, but I mean, clearly you want them to understand you as well, but his work also says seek first to understand and then to be understood. So this is extremely important. And there's a beautiful story I want to share about a woman and her husband because they had like a corrugated tin garden shed that could only be described as an eyesore. And every time the woman of the house looked out her kitchen window, she just saw the corrugated tin garden shed. So she wanted to get rid of it, but her husband really enjoyed puttering in the garden. And he was actually terminally ill, and this gardening was just really healing for him. So once again, similar to the disappointment exercise I talked about, once she connected to his deep need for keeping the shed, the garden shed, she agreed to keep it. So on the outside, it might look like a compromise that he won and she lost, but synergy is about creating win-win, and compromise is win-lose. And our society really is geared towards win-lose, and unfortunately, it's very destructive. So just think in the case of this woman, if she had, forced her position and then lost her husband, if as she saw the like his soul energy just drained from him without the healing gardening, I think she would feel horrible. So it's really, really important to consider the other person's point of view. And sometimes we have to let go of the people who aren't ready to love us. And this can be very challenging. So the invitation here is to stop having hard conversations with people who don't want to or are unwilling to change. Stop showing up for people who are indifferent to your presence. And stop prioritizing people who make you an option. If the energy you alone are putting into the relationship is the only thing that's sustaining the relationship, that's not love, it's attachment. And this is another wonderful quote from Brianna Weist. So the love you seek it's not out there, it's inside you. So know that whatever path you choose, that you are the artist of your life. What is it that you want to create with regards to love? Perhaps that was something that you wanted to manifest this year. I don't know. It's also important to cultivate appreciation and gratitude. They move you up the spiral of the positive emotions. And although these are similar, on some days you might find that you have easier access to appreciation. Because sometimes gratitude is feels very, you can if you keep a gratitude journal, you can sort of become kind of rote about it. Yeah, I'm grateful for um, this beautiful day. I'm grateful for um, drinking, clean drinking water and things, and it can become kind of mechanical. But you can certainly appreciate the basic necessities that we have that not everyone in the world has access to. So we saw this chart before, and I just want to circle back to it because love and acceptance, or acceptance and forgiveness, are really important. It's about learning to love what is. That's part of the work of Byron Katie. But it's also, I want to really help you understand that acceptance and forgiveness, the reason they're so healing, it doesn't mean you are okay with the other person's behavior. There's a lot of divisive feelings around politics. Well, not just now, but the past 8 years, really, or maybe even longer than that. And it doesn't mean you're okay, but when you accept it, it's no longer harming you. And if you forgive someone that's hurt you, it doesn't mean what they did was okay. It just means you're not going to let it hurt you. And the most powerful story I heard around this, there was a woman who, if you've ever heard of StoryCorps, her son was murdered and his murderer was in jail and she forgave him. I really can't imagine anything harder than doing that. And yet it was so freeing. She said, I don't have a son now. You have to be my son. So it was so healing, not only for her, but for him. So I'm sharing some of these challenging stories because oftentimes we think our situation is so hard, and many of us do face very challenging situations, but we all have it within us to choose love. So, having the courage to choose love over fear, if you notice, I'm just going to go back for a second. Oops. Courage is the tipping point into the upward spiral of emotion. And so, when you have the courage to choose love over fear, you're going to move up that spiral. So, ask yourself, how might love view this situation? What might love do? How might love respond? How would love see this? How can I practice love in unexpected places? So this is kind of reminds me of the little bracelets that say, "What would Jesus do?" It's very similar concept. So when you feel stuck, ask yourself these questions and really notice when you're choosing from fear, because you should feel, because of the frequency that I shared earlier, you will probably feel more contracted in your body. Ultimately, you want to become the source of love. You want to be the love you want to see in the world. Consider one way you can be a source of love this week. So, the key to opening your heart is to notice how you close. There's a simple mirror exercise that helps cultivate self love, and that is just you put a post it note on your mirror to remind yourself to love yourself. And then every morning when you wake up, you look in the mirror and you say, I love you, I love you, I love you, I love you. And this is really challenging. I mean, try to do it for a minute. And if you can do it for a minute, see if you can go longer. I have more um, challenging mirror exercises, but we're just, for the purposes of this webinar, we're just going to start with that. Now I want to do a connect to your heart exercise. So I want to invite you to place your hand over your heart. And just focus on breathing in and out through your heart space. And this is just building coherence between your heart and your mind. And it helps if you can actually connect to a joyful memory. And just ask your heart, what do I need in this moment? Do I need to go for a walk? Do I need to connect with a friend? Do I need to take a nap? Do I need to connect with nature? But don't only pause to ask the question, but honor the answer. And if nothing comes in, you're probably just out of practice in listening. So we're going to share a link to an app that helps you, reminds you to pause 3 minutes several times a day. You can set it for every 3 hours, or and it's just a great practice to become more present and also to really be honoring what you need. So if you haven't already, go ahead and type your questions in the chat. I mean, in the Q&A, sorry. Right, so I don't see any questions right now. So if you think of any, feel free to pop them in. Okay, so how can I practice loving myself more? So these two exercises that we just did will will help. Um, the mirror exercise and the heart connection exercise. And the energy work that I do, I shared earlier, it works with belief systems. So when I do like you if the root cause is that you don't think you're worthy of receiving love, then um, you're not going to be able to honor honor that honor your own honor your love, I guess. Sorry, I'm tripping over my words here. But yeah, so when I used to do when my daughter was in college, she would call and say, "Can you do a session on me? I'm just not feeling like my best self." So there was probably a situation where she was, beating herself up for something, for some perceived failure. And the great thing about the energy work is you don't have to know what is getting in your way. It's usually something that's operating at the subconscious level. And so, um, what I love about the work that I do is it actually just determines what's ready to shift, like what beliefs are ready to shift at the subconscious level that are getting in the way, but you don't have to know what the belief is. And once it's at the conscious awareness level, then it's something you can work with. So the other thing to notice is to pay more attention to how you feel in your body because when your energy is contracted, you're not loving yourself. And um, so physical movement can change your energy. So one thing that you can do is like I already shared, I love to run. So physical movement is really great because it gets energy moving. But also with uh, you know, you can dance. When my daughter was in high school, she was really stressed out about her AP courses, and she was a gymnast and a track athlete. She had a lot going on. And so we turned on Red, Red Wine, and the beginning of that music is like, cheerio, cheerio, baby. And we're just dancing around, and your energy can't shift. Like, it's, you maybe have heard about when people, you can't be angry when you hug someone. And maybe you still can, but you feel an immediate difference when you feel really angry and someone hugs you. It's really hard to stay angry. And again, that's about not doing it two places at once. So um, if if you so again stemming addressing the question in the chat about stemming negative thought patterns, um, that really I think uh, if you want to try the work I do, then you can schedule a free discovery call. Um, Beyond that, uh, it's really hard to address the negative thought patterns uh, consciously because they're mostly operating at the subconscious level. And so I think Susan's work with, she does some energy work called EMDR, and that's slightly different than my energy work. But either way, it addresses the, these barriers that you're referring to, these negative thought patterns were created when you were young and they're living in your subconscious mind. And that is what we want to address because once they're at the conscious level, then you can work with them. And you might think you know and can work with them, but until you address the root, the origin, the root cause, um, it's really hard to, it's not something you can power through. It's like trying to lead an elephant by a rope. I mean, an elephant that's not trained. So, uh, any other questions? Oh, yeah, here's a question. What if your partner doesn't love themselves? So this is a really great question, and it's really challenging because it's hard as because you love them so much, it's hard for you to understand why they can't love themselves. But in that case, you just want to keep on loving them and encourage them to do their own work. But again, this is something that everyone has to choose their own path. And again, I want to get back to boundaries because I maybe went too fast, but um, I just finished a beautiful book called Beautiful Boy, and it's about a father and son, whose son was a meth addict. So it was really hard. And it didn't really get better until the father created boundaries, but also did his own healing because he was actually became enmeshed or, addicted or enmeshed in his son's addiction. And it was really um, impacting his health and his family and everyone. And so it's super important to get to the root cause. And that's why I talk, what Kristen mentioned, the inside out, because so often when we think the problem is out there, it's actually going on inside us. And this is really a powerful thing to understand because um, I've had an embodied experience of that. So I can share a recent story from my personal life. So, my husband's a very busy guy, and he's always been a busy guy. But I think recently that was bothering me because a lot of my friends have moved out of the area. We're kind of we're grandparents now, and our kids are grown, and so a lot of our friends have moved away. And so I think I was relying on him more than I had in the past for quality time and attention. And so once I started meeting my own needs, then um, things got better. So I wasn't relying on him to make it better. So I felt like he was the problem because he was so busy, but it was actually happening in me. And once you have an embodied experience of that, you can really, really um, start making progress because you then understand that it's not up to anyone else; it's up to you. Like that saying, if it's to be, if it's to be, it's up to me. So let's see. I don't know if that does that feel like I answered your questions, or do people want further comments? If you need more, you can just say, I need you to say more. Okay. So I just want you um, to remember that I'm here to support you. I offer one-on-one healing sessions as well as relationship coaching and more. And you can use the link here. I can put these in the chat, or we'll also follow it up with the email after this webinar you can book a discovery call, and there will be a link also to sign up for the next webinar from Beyond the Couch, which is going to be offered by our art therapist, Ellen Copland. And I know this is really powerful work. I don't know specifically what Ellen does. I don't think she's here today to share her work, but I know from my disease prevention and reversal, uh, we do something called soul art, and it's very healing at the soul level. And that is really, I shared earlier, at the root of all disease is lack of self-love. So you really want to learn how to love yourself. And if you're struggling with that, I encourage you to, you know, try something like either Susan's work or my work or the art therapy, because all energy work or even all therapies have different flavors. And just like we like different flavors of ice cream, there's going to be different flavors of therapy that work for us. So um, just figure out what works for you. And like I said, you can do a free discovery call if you want to learn more about what that looks like working with me. Um, so we're going to if there's no more questions, we're going to wrap up a few minutes early. I want to thank you for coming. I want to wish you a happy Valentine's Day. And I want to remind you that you are your best Valentine. So I really want you to go out there and love on yourself. And if I can support you in any way, please feel free to reach out. Thank you for coming in. I'm going to go ahead and copy a few things in the chat, but they will also, let me see.
Thank you so much, Laura. This has been an incredible presentation. I hope everybody really enjoyed learning how to love ourselves, have boundaries, speak better to our partners about what we need, love languages. I got a lot out of that. Thank you so much. And just a reminder for everyone, we will be sending you an email with this recording of this webinar today, as well as links to how to sign up for next month's webinar as well. Laura, any final thoughts?
I just want to share that I did put my contact info in the chat, as well as the Triple Flame app, the Gene Keys. I didn't want to give you access to it during the presentation so you wouldn't get sidetracked. But that's really great because it'll pause you throughout the day for 3 minutes. And I encourage you to do that exercise. Um, and and I want to go back to Frederick's question because um, when you're like I shared earlier that emotions are energy in motion, and when whenever and it's a chemical reaction that only lasts about 90 seconds in the body. So whenever you experience an emotion that's lasting longer than a couple of minutes, then it's really important to look at the story you're telling yourself that's keeping that emotion alive in your system. And so if you say, oh, here I go again, I'm not loving myself, when am I ever going to start loving, if you start having this story, that's going to perpetuate this feeling that you can't do it. That you're just you don't have access to it. So anything that connects you to your body, like movement or dance or anything like that, is going to shift your energy and that thought panel, that thought process. So that is another thing you can just practice on your own. Um, and also, you want to give yourself compassion, because I get the sense that when I read this, you fall in the face of barriers, that you are now beating yourself up for not achieving some level of self-love that you've decided is where you need to be. And so when you can just honor where you are, that loving what is, that just accepting where you are, that's going to be really huge. Um, I should there's in Don Miguel Ruiz's book, The Four Agreements, he talks about always do your best. And I think that you have to recognize that right now you are doing your best. And sometimes that doesn't look pretty. My daughter, when one of my daughters had a panic attack in high school, and she was literally in a puddle on our hardwood floor in the family room, hyperventilating. I don't know what to do. I don't know what to do. And in that moment, that was the best she had. So it didn't look pretty, but if she had anything better, if she had access to anything more in that moment, she wouldn't have been in a puddle on the floor. So I think what I really want to encourage you more than anything else is to let go of that judgment of self. That would be maybe an important first step, is to just let go of the judgment and acknowledge that this is the best I have right now. And really not to let yourself off the hook, but to really give yourself some compassion, self-compassion and grace. I know someone earlier in the chat mentioned love is compassion. I think that was Amy. So that's really a great practice to involve yourself in.
Awesome. Thank you
Anything
so
else?
much, Laura. You've shared so much about love today, and I hope this has helped everybody to have an incredible Valentine's Day, as well as a year going forward and a lifetime more of love, learning to love ourselves more. This is the best, the best thing we can learn, right? So thank you so much. And we look forward to having our community back on with us again in a month to hear more about how, okay, we can use art therapy for healing. So thank you guys so much for coming. We appreciate it. Have a great Valentine's Day.
Happy Valentine's Day, everybody. Thanks for coming. Bye-bye.